To college football, where the season that began just 3 weeks ago figures to produce no fewer than 70 teams that will somehow end up going to postseason bowl games. It wasn't that long ago that the college games postseason featured only about a half dozen bowl games involving only the conference champions. That there are now almost 3 dozen bowl games speaks volumes about just how much the dollars involved in what are laughingly called amateur athletics have warped the system. Fittingly, those bowls too are often not what they appear to be, involving hefty TV contracts, corporate sponsorships, and high ticket prices. The bowls would seem to be a very commercial enterprise. But as R. Bernard Goldberg explains, most bowl games are allowed to conduct all of their business entirely tax-free.
Why are there now so many bowl games in so many cities that go on and on and on and on? In a word, money. In 5 words, lots and lots of money. How much? Try more than $250 million a year. It may not surprise you that big sports generate big money, but it may surprise you where all that money goes and where it doesn't go. And here's something else that may surprise you. Most of those big business bowls aren't exactly businesses at all. They're nonprofit charities. A college football bowl organization is a charity?
Yeah, I agree with you. It does sound a little bit crazy.
Dean Zerbe is the former tax counsel for the Senate Finance Committee.
To be honest, I was a little bit surprised too, and I've looked at charities for years. You never think about it looking at them.
That's because they don't look anything like the Salvation Army or the Red Cross. But like those charities, they get a very special break from the government.
They don't pay any taxes. They don't pay any taxes on any of that, and you and I are subsidizing them, and everyone watching is subsidizing them.
In return, Zerbe says, charities must spend their money on good causes, not on enriching themselves.
If you're running these bowls, it's a chance to do good, not a chance to do well.
To do well, meaning to get rich off of it.
Right. You can go ahead and pay yourself a reasonable salary, and you can do that, but after that, it's got to go to a charitable purpose.
The Bowls say they give the vast majority of their income to a very good cause, schools, the very schools that play in their games.
That is their primary purpose and the reason they got their nonprofit status.
Bruce Bernstein is a tax advisor to some of the 23 bowls that are set up as charities and spoke to us on behalf of the industry.
Most of the bowls pay out over 75 to 80% of all revenue they bring in goes back to the participating schools.
What percentage goes back to the schools?
75 to 80% often of the total revenue that the bowls take in are paid out to the participating universities.
But that's not what the records show, the bowl's own financial records, the kind all charities must submit each year to the IRS. In the 2009-2010 bowl season, out of 16 bowls which provided complete numbers, how many gave 75 or 80% of revenues to schools? None, not one. The average bowl didn't give 70% either, or 60%, but somewhere in the mid-50s. Some bowls gave in the 40s, even the 30s, and one barely gave a quarter, the Humanitarian Bowl. Its payout was so small that both teams spent more going to the game than they got paid to be there. On top of that, many schools find that the money they do get from the bowls with one hand is often taken back with the other.
I was under the illusion that the bowls were a great payday for universities. I mean, I had that kind of public illusion, call it delusion.
Murray Sperber teaches English at Cal Berkeley and has written extensively about the business of college sports.
I remember this one woman, third from the top of an athletic department, saying, I hate these bowls. I hate everything about them. And I said, what about the payouts and everything? He said, what payouts? You're giving it right back.
Last year, UConn was forced to give much of its payout back to the Fiesta Bowl. Why? Because the Fiesta Bowl, like most bowls, makes its guests share the risk of staging the game. Schools are required to sell thousands of tickets, and if they can't, they eat the loss. In UConn's case, 14,000 tickets worth, nearly $3 million. Many bowls make schools cover other costs too. In 2009, the Outback Bowl got free halftime entertainment from the Iowa band, flown in at Iowa's expense. But despite the free entertainment, The band wasn't allowed to watch the game for free. The school had to buy them tickets. Total cost, more than $22,000.
That's more money that's not going to the university.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking universities that are, firing staff, not putting a dime into buildings and grounds, all kinds of cost-cutting moves. I thought I had seen all the scams possible in college sports, and the bowls have come up with new ones.
Professor, forgive me for stating the obvious. Nobody's holding a gun to anybody's head. The bowl comes calling, and the university goes running.
Many coaches and athletic directors have a clause in their contract that if their team goes to a bowl game, they get a bonus. So, of course, they want to go to bowl games for the bonus.
Even if the school loses money?
Even if the school loses money.
But the bowl's tax advisor says that in the end, schools don't lose because going to a bowl game has other advantages.
For one thing, it is proven that when the universities get that kind of exposure, that charitable giving to the universities goes up significantly. More students apply to those universities, and so they have a lot of other economic impact that isn't purely in the dollars they spend to go there and get paid.
But if the schools are not getting paid what the bowls claim, where is the rest of the money going? The bowls say that they also give to the needy. They don't have to, they say, not by law, but they do anyway to support the community.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Listen to what Derek Fox, the head of the Bowl Association, told Congress under oath in 2009.
Since almost all the postseason bowl games are put on by charitable groups, with up to 1/4 of the proceeds from the games are dedicated to the community, local charities receive tens of millions of dollars every year.
Up to 1/4 of the proceeds from the games are dedicated to the community. Local charities receive tens of millions of dollars a year. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. Now, in the latest year for which we have records, the nonprofit bowls combined didn't give up to 1/4 to charities. They gave less than 2%.
I don't have a knowledge of the exact percentage they give.
We do. The tax-exempt bowls took in $261 million in the 2009-2010 season and gave away to the needy not tens of millions of dollars, but barely $4 million. Take the Sugar Bowl. The game is played in one of the neediest places in America, New Orleans. In the 4 years after Hurricane Katrina hit, the Sugar Bowl made $72 million in revenues and gave away not up to 1/4 of that, as the bowls told Congress is the industry standard, but 1.6%. In fact, during those years, the Sugar Bowl was getting much more from the people of Louisiana than they were giving away to them, collecting more than $6 million in taxpayer subsidies from the state government.
That's just nuts. Looking to the state to give them funds, that's just crazy.
We shared the Bowl's financial records with Dean Zerbe, the former Senate tax specialist. Zerbe helped lead the Finance Committee's probe into Enron and exposed irregularities at some of the country's biggest charities.
They should be looking to help the community, not saying, how can you help us? They shouldn't be rattling the tin cup. They should be opening up the wallet and helping the community.
The state's subsidies to the Sugar Bowl came at a time when Louisiana was slashing other costs to the bone, including money to charities like the Boys and Girls Club in New Orleans, which now gets nothing from the state. Dewan Hernandez heads up the organization and took us on a tour of the facilities.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Look at this.
Yeah,
Look at this.
this is classic after the storm in New Orleans.
This looks like something out of World War II.
Yep.
After the bombing.
This used to be the club's crown jewel, a beautiful modern gymnasium.
Look at the roof. Look.
Big hole. And this gym used to house hundreds of kids on any given day of the week just playing basketball and playing pickup games.
Because there's been no money for repairs, the gym pretty much looks like it did 6 years ago, right after Katrina hit.
What do you think when you see this?
I wish I could write a check.
Just fix it.
I'd just fix it. I really would.
Not far from here, Katrina smashed into another sports facility. You may remember the iconic image, a hole in the roof at the Superdome, the Sugar Bowl's home stadium. That hole has long since been fixed, of course. This one hasn't. We asked Juan Hernandez if he'd consider a source of funding he hasn't tried before. His neighbor, the wealthiest bowl game in America.
Well, what if you found out that, let's say, the Sugar Bowl had $30 million in the bank?
Mm-hmm.
What would your reaction be?
I'd call them and ask them for some.
You going to do that?
You bet I will.
The Sugar Bowl says they save all that money for the same reason they ask for all those state subsidies, because more money means bigger and better Sugar Bowls, and that benefits the whole community. In fact, according to Bruce Bernstein, the Boys and Girls Club owes a lot to the Sugar Bowl already.
The Sugar Bowl has given them millions of dollars. How they've done that is they've brought in 80 to 90,000 fans a year to go to the game. That puts money in the local community, and ultimately I bet the Boys and Girls Club get more contributions because there's money in that community to do just that.
But if most bowls aren't giving as much as they say to charities or schools, then where is all that tax-exempt money going? In many cases, much of it goes to pay the people who run the bowls.
You can pay salaries.
You can pay salaries, but you got to pay salaries that are reasonable. You have to be able to look people in the eye and taxpayers and the supporters and say, this is a fair amount of money that we're doing. We're not squandering your money.
That's why even some of the biggest charities try to keep salaries down. Doctors Without Borders pays its top officer $130,000 a year. Amnesty International, $222,000. The Salvation Army, $242,000 to run a charity that brings in 10 times as much revenue as the college bowls combined. And the people who run the bowl games?
All right, let me give you some specifics and then get your reaction, all right? The Outback Bowl CEO, he makes nearly $700,000 per year. The Orange Bowl CEO is making over $500,000. The Cotton Bowl person who runs that, almost $500,000.
They have my eyebrows raised in terms of the salaries. They just don't sit well in terms of this being the right salary for what they're doing.
And if running one bowl game sounds like a job with a nice hefty salary, imagine what running two bowl games at the same time would be like.
John Junker, he made nearly $500,000 running the Fiesta Bowl while moonlighting at something called the Insight Bowl, where he made $184,000 for what was, and this is according to their own records, 12 hours of work a week. What does that sound like to you?
It sounds like a job most Americans would want.
Junker lost his job last year when it came out that he was enjoying lavish perks as well, like spending over $100,000 of the Fiesta Bowl's charitable funds on a golf date with Jack Nicklaus, and $1,200 more going to a strip club. We wanted to talk to some of the directors of the bowls, but the Football Bowl Association said that none of them wanted to talk to us. Instead, they sent us to Bruce Bernstein, the tax advisor, who told us that bowl directors work hard and that they deserve everything they get.
Maybe the duties and responsibilities of a bowl executive director far exceeded what the other examples you're giving.
So it's not a one-day-a-year job, as some people think.
Absolutely.
It's a full-time job. Let me tell you what else is a full-time job. In New Orleans, the Sugar Bowl head, according to our recent figures, made about $600,000 a year, which you say is absolutely reasonable and competitive and fair.
Sure.
But in the same city, New Orleans, another full-time job running Habitat for Humanity and trying to get people back into houses after Katrina, that guy made $95,000 a year. Does it sound right to you?
The real question is, what does it cost to recruit and retain the talent to run the Habitat for Humanity? What does it cost to recruit and retain the talent to run the bowl organization? The market sets that, and that's what they're making.
It sounds like you're saying it takes a lot more ability to run a bowl game than it does to run Habitat for Humanity.
Apparently so, because that's what the market price is for that position.
There is at least one other place where some bowls spend money, trying to ensure that the system they built stays in place. With fans, players, and pundits calling for the current system to be scrapped in favor of a playoff tournament, bowl executives seem to be trying to make friends in high places. This is where, in 2009, the Orange Bowl hosted scores of college football power brokers, athletic directors, conference commissioners, TV executives, and more, along with their spouses, for an all-expense-paid business meeting with a not-so-all-business name, the Summer Splash.
A 4-day cruise on the Royal Caribbean Majesty of the Seas, a trip to the private island of Coco Cay, a trip to the Bahamas Atlantis Resort, spa treatments. What do you think?
I think it's just disgraceful. I just can't get my jaw off the ground how many people they're taking on these trips. It's big, big money. Well, these are the people that help decide the framework of the bowl structure. Now, are we going to have bowls? How's that going to work? How are we going to relate to the bowls? These people all have a voice at that. This is very much about currying favor, I fear.
But Bruce Bernstein says that trips like these are a legitimate use of a charity's funds because they help the bowls accomplish their ultimate charitable mission.
I can assure you business is being conducted, and that is being conducted in a major way and enhances what that nonprofit business is all about.
And if they say, hey, Mother Teresa, let's get something straight. We talk business on those cruises. You say?
I say I've looked at the itineraries, and I don't know between the gin and tonics and the Arnold Palmers. These are monies that could be going to help students pay for college, but instead it's going to have them take gold-plated vacations and living a champagne lifestyle. That's just for the birds.
The Fiesta Bowl has also hosted business trips at this golf resort in Arizona, which also had an all-business name, the Fiesta Frolic. But what got the bowl in hot water last winter was the money it had spent courting power brokers, not in college sports, but in government.
According to the IRS laws regarding charities like the bowls, are they allowed to give money to politicians and political candidates?
No.
No, period.
No, period.
Okay. The Fiesta Bowl, as you know, was caught laundering money to political candidates. And by laundering money, I mean the bowl didn't give the money to political candidates, employees did, and then the employees were reimbursed.
It's not a good thing, but it's an isolated incident. I have never heard of another instance of where a bowl organization made a political contribution. And I ask you, Bernie, have you heard of that? Because somebody was foolish enough to do that.
The answer is yes. Let me interrupt you. The answer is yes. Louisiana State campaign finance records show several contributions from the Sugar Bowl to the governor of Louisiana. You asked me a question.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, but if the organization is foolish enough to have done that, it'll get reported, and obviously now there's two situations been reported.
Real Sports has discovered records showing that between 2004 and 2006, the Sugar Bowl made several political contributions totaling several $1,000s to the then governor of Louisiana, Kathleen Blanco. At the same time, the state of Louisiana was giving the Sugar Bowl more than $1 million a year in subsidies.
This raises very serious questions, and they themselves need to be doing a clearinghouse at the Sugar Bowl, saying how did we get ourselves in this position if we engaged in something that was just flat out not proper.
We told the Sugar Bowl what we'd found, and after an internal investigation into our findings, they confirmed that several contributions to the governor had in fact been made, and as they put it, that should not have been done. They also told us that they asked for and got their contributions back and have reported the incidents to the IRS. The nonprofit bowls say they were formed for the public good, but one former government watchdog on charity says they need to be doing a lot better.
I think they've got a lot of problems there. They've really got to change what they're doing, and I think Congress needs to look at it. I think the states need to be looking at it, and I think the administration should be looking at it because it's children that are suffering, it's students that are suffering, and we're all subsidizing it, all of us taxpayers.
Bernie, once again, it seems amateur athletics applies only to the players, huh? Everybody else is getting rich.
Well, there's a lot of money in the bowls, over $250 million a year, and no question, some of it goes to the people who run the bowls.
Yeah,
you know?
given the facts, why haven't we seen or heard more local outrage from the communities that host these bowl games?
That's a very good question, because the bowls are in their communities, precisely because the bowls are in their communities, and as a result, whatever the bowl gives to the schools or whatever it gives to charities, people do spend money at restaurants, at hotels. They spend lots of money in the community, so the community is certainly a beneficiary of the bowls. No question about that.
But why isn't there, I guess what I'm asking is, why, even on the local level, isn't there more oversight of what they're doing and how they're spending?
When you say at the local level, you mean the mayor or the... They don't care.
The city council, the taxpayers, whatever.
They couldn't care less. This is one big plus for them. The fact that a bowl comes to their town and brings in 50, 60, 100,000 tourists, let's say, that's just good for their business. Now, I need to point out, because it's very important to the bowl people, that even though they say they give 75 to 80% to the schools that play in the games, and we went through the records, they don't.
Not even close.
No, they give about 55 or thereabouts percent on average, some less, some more. But their argument is, we don't give that, we don't give 75 to 80% this year, maybe last year, maybe we don't next year, but over time we will. And you know what? It's possible that at some point they'll take the 30 million they have in the bank, the Sugar Bowl, they're saying they're giving 2 million to charity this year, by the way, and take that 30 million and in one fell swoop.
Right.
I'm just telling you what's important to them.
All right, Bernie, thanks very much. I believe that one. Let's